something shifted, and suddenly the energy around you feels different. Someone who once kept their distance now seems unusually gentle, unusually attentive, almost too attentive. It feels as if something unspoken has begun moving beneath the surface, as if a realization happened quietly. And now someone is trying to reposition themselves closer to your light. The first energy here reveals a suspended upside-down figure, suggesting someone who once observed from a distance, someone who may have misjudged you or underestimated the depth of your spirit. There is a sense that this person did not fully understand your value at first, but something recently forced them to pause, reflect, and reconsider the role you play in their life. Then we see a calm woman gently taming a lion, a powerful symbol of inner strength and quiet grace. Your energy feels steady, compassionate, patient, almost disarming. There is something about your kindness that feels rare, something about your emotional control that makes others feel safe, but also intrigued. Not everyone understands strength when it comes without noise, and beneath this, the energy of a mystical woman holding hidden knowledge appears reversed, suggesting something not fully revealed, emotions not openly spoken, intentions that may not yet be completely honest. There is a sense that someone is learning how to approach you, learning how to appear softer, more caring, perhaps even more aligned than they truly feel inside. Something here feels unfinished, as if a quiet decision is being made behind the scenes, and the deeper message begins to unfold as we look closer into what is truly motivating this sudden shift in energy. And as this energy continues to unfold, we begin to see a subtle shift in intention taking shape behind the scenes. The presence of 3 coins beneath a delicate hanging plant suggests something that should feel cooperative, something that should grow naturally through shared effort. Yet here it feels slightly misaligned, slightly unbalanced, as if someone is trying to participate in your world without truly contributing from a sincere place. There is a sense that this person is beginning to study what brings you stability, what brings you abundance, what allows your energy to flourish. But rather than building something mutual, the motivation feels uneven, almost as if they are trying to position themselves closer to your blessings without fully investing the same level of authenticity. What feels especially noticeable here is that the growth itself still surrounds you. The environment remains fertile, your spirit remains abundant, but someone observing this may be realizing that proximity to your light carries benefit. And because of this realization, subtle adjustments begin happening quietly, behaviors softening, words becoming sweeter, efforts appearing more intentional than before. Yet something still feels slightly off rhythm, as if cooperation is being imitated rather than genuinely felt. The energy here suggests that someone may be trying to appear supportive, trying to seem aligned, but internally they may still be calculating how to remain connected to what nourishes you. This is where the situation begins to reveal whether intentions are rooted in true respect or in quiet self-interest. And the next energies will begin to show how this dynamic continues evolving beneath the surface. And now, something becomes harder to ignore. There is a growing awareness here, like an inner eye slowly opening, beginning to notice patterns that once felt insignificant. The energy suggests that the truth has been quietly present for some time, but perhaps overlooked out of compassion or out of the desire to believe the best in someone. Yet now, there is a feeling that emotional signals are becoming more visible, like small gestures, small inconsistencies, beginning to form a clearer picture. There is an impression of feelings being offered, yet not fully shared, as if emotional cups are present but something about the exchange feels incomplete, slightly distant, slightly performative. It can feel confusing when kindness is mirrored back to you, but the depth does not quite match the sincerity you naturally give. Almost as if someone has learned what touches your heart and is now carefully choosing when and how to reveal certain emotions. What this situation seems to be revealing is the importance of emotional discernment. Not everyone who approaches gently is arriving with the same intention. Sometimes the presence of affection can feel real, but the consistency behind it tells a different story. And your intuition may already be sensing this quiet imbalance, even if it has not yet been fully acknowledged. The realization forming here is not meant to create doubt in your heart, but to strengthen your awareness of what genuine connection truly feels like. Because when someone values you deeply, their energy does not feel calculated. It feels steady, open, naturally reciprocal. And as this awareness continues expanding, the next part of the reading begins to show how this truth influences the decisions that are quietly beginning to take shape within you. And somewhere beneath this unfolding awareness, there is also a recognition that someone may already understand the value of what you hold, perhaps even more clearly than they openly admit. The energy here feels like quiet observation, mixed with subtle urgency, as if the awareness of your emotional generosity, your stability, your ability to create harmony, has awakened a desire to remain close to what feels rare. Yet the intention does not feel entirely balanced, almost like someone carefully reaching toward what brings comfort, while not fully revealing what they truly carry inside. There is a sense of something being quietly gathered, almost like preserving access to a source that feels nourishing, valuable, even protective. And yet, the presence here feels slightly guarded, slightly strategic, like a dark bird watching from the side, aware of what can be gained but hesitant to expose the full truth of its motivations. This can sometimes show up when a person recognizes the emotional richness you offer. But instead of meeting you in equal openness, they attempt to secure a place in your life through subtle positioning, through controlled gestures, through carefully measured closeness. What makes this dynamic important is that your energy itself remains abundant. Your kindness still flows naturally. But there is an invitation here to notice who truly contributes to that flow and who simply benefits from standing near it. Because when intentions are sincere, connection feels like exchange, not quiet accumulation. And the difference between the two is something your intuition is already beginning to sense more clearly now. And in many ways, the deeper truth here is that your emotional presence itself actually draws attention, not through force, but through quiet depth, like someone calmly reading an open book while remaining fully aware of their own inner world. There is something about the way you understand people, the way you sense subtle emotional shifts, that creates a kind of quiet admiration around you. Others may feel seen in your presence, comforted by your empathy, supported by your ability to hold space without judgment. And because of this, your energy can easily become something others wish to be close to. Something they feel elevates their own sense of worth. Yet this also reveals why the imbalance began forming in the first place. When someone recognizes the emotional intelligence you carry, they may begin to mirror the sensitivity they believe will resonate with you, almost like carefully choosing which pages to show, while keeping others hidden. It can feel flattering at first, this sense that someone appreciates your heart, your compassion, your intuitive nature. But slowly, the realization emerges that admiration alone is not the same as emotional honesty. Your openness has never been weakness. It has been quiet strength, the ability to feel deeply without losing yourself. And now, there is a growing awareness that true recognition does not require performance. It reveals itself naturally, without needing to be studied, without needing to be rehearsed. allowing the next layer of this situation to show who is truly aligned with your energy and who is still learning how to appear that way. And what begins to surface here is the realization that someone may have remained in this connection longer than they openly admit. Not because everything felt pure from the beginning, but because being near your energy offered something they were not ready to release. There is a feeling of someone lingering in a suspended position, almost as if time paused for them the moment they recognize the comfort your presence provides. The attachment does not feel entirely transparent, more like a quiet holding on, as if they are unsure how to step away without losing access to what feels emotionally stabilizing for them. At times, this can show up as subtle emotional entanglement, where admiration slowly becomes dependence, and appreciation begins to blur into attachment. It may feel as though someone has been waiting, watching, trying to understand how to maintain closeness without fully acknowledging why that closeness feels so necessary to them. Almost like remaining upside down in a moment of reflection, aware that the connection brings relief, yet uncertain how to engage with it in a balanced way. This is where the deeper layer of the situation reveals itself, because when attachment forms quietly, it can create dynamics where affection is expressed, but not always from a place of full emotional freedom. And your awareness now begins to illuminate whether this bond is encouraging growth for both sides, or gently asking you to reconsider what true, energetic balance actually feels like moving forward. And quietly, there is also the realization that something about this connection may have begun to revolve more around what can be received, rather than what is mutually built. The sense here is that someone has been slowly adjusting how they show up, offering just enough warmth, just enough presence, almost like carefully tipping a bottle, only when they feel it will keep the connection flowing. There is a subtle awareness that cooperation may be presented on the surface, yet internally, the motivation leans toward maintaining access to what feels emotionally or energetically beneficial. This can sometimes happen when a person recognizes the light another carries, and instead of developing their own source of stability, they begin to rely on proximity to yours. The gestures may appear collaborative, the intentions may seem supportive, yet something about the rhythm feels slightly uneven, as if effort increases only when distance becomes possible. Almost like responding when the balance feels at risk of shifting, rather than nurturing the connection consistently. What becomes more visible now is the importance of reciprocity that feels natural, not prompted, not carefully measured. Because genuine partnership does not need to be preserved through quiet dependency. It grows through shared presence, shared sincerity, shared emotional accountability. And this awareness gently guides you toward recognizing who is truly building something alongside you, and who may still be learning how to receive without unconsciously taking more than they give. And what quietly emerges here is the understanding that the spark you carry has always required protection, because not everyone who feels drawn to your light is prepared to honor the responsibility that comes with it. There is a sense of inner resilience forming, like someone who has already climbed many invisible steps, learning through experience when enthusiasm is genuine, and when it is fueled by the desire to stay close to what inspires them. The energy suggests that while attraction toward your warmth may feel strong, sustaining that closeness requires emotional maturity, consistency, and a willingness to meet you with the same clarity you naturally offer. It can feel as though part of you has already learned to observe carefully, maintaining quiet strength, recognizing when motivation is inspired by shared vision, and when it is driven by fear of losing access to what feels uplifting. Almost like continuing forward while keeping awareness steady, noticing which efforts feel aligned with growth, and which feel shaped by quiet uncertainty. This does not remove the potential for something meaningful, but it does invite a deeper level of discernment about who is truly ready to nurture the same flame, rather than simply standing near it for warmth. And as this awareness continues to strengthen, the next layer begins to reveal whether this connection can evolve into something mutually empowering, or whether its purpose has been to help you recognize the value of protecting the energy that naturally attracts so much attention. And as this clarity settles more deeply within you, the dynamic itself begins to respond. There is a subtle tension forming, almost as if the balance of effort is being quietly tested, like several people reaching for the same unstable structure, unsure who will truly hold their ground. When your energy becomes more discerning, when your warmth is no longer given automatically, it can create a moment where hidden motivations feel slightly exposed, where intentions that once remained unnoticed begin to reveal themselves through reaction rather than words. You may begin to notice small shifts in behavior, moments where cooperation feels less smooth, or where emotional responses feel more charged than before. This does not necessarily mean conflict in the obvious sense, but rather the natural friction that appears when someone senses that the access they once felt certain of is no longer guaranteed. It can feel like watching individuals trying to maintain their footing on uneven branches, each uncertain how the situation will stabilize. And in many ways, this is the first honest movement of the situation. Because when energy is no longer taken for granted, authenticity has no choice but to surface. Those who truly value your presence begin to show consistency, while those who were leaning too heavily on your light may feel unsettled by the shift. And through this, the truth of who is aligned with your growth begins quietly revealing itself. And as this begins to take shape, there is also a quiet turning inward, almost like someone pausing long enough to see their own reflection more clearly than before. The reactions that surface in response to your changing energy begin to reveal something deeper, not only about their intentions, but about the way attachment itself has been influencing their choices. It can feel as though a hidden version of the truth starts becoming harder to ignore, like glimpsing a faint mirror image beneath the surface, showing what has been motivating certain actions all along. For some, this creates a moment of discomfort, because awareness tends to loosen patterns that once felt convenient. The space between what is genuine and what is performed becomes more noticeable. And with that awareness comes the realization that maintaining connection through imitation requires effort that cannot remain hidden forever. It may feel as if someone is slowly recognizing their own role in the imbalance, acknowledging internally that closeness built on quiet dependency cannot continue in the same way once clarity enters the dynamic. And through this, the emotional momentum begins organizing itself differently. Because when illusions begin to thin, choices naturally follow. What once felt automatic now requires intention, honesty, and a willingness to meet the connection in a more transparent way. Allowing the situation to gradually reveal whether sincerity can replace performance as the foundation moving forward. And as this transparency begins to take root, there is a sense that something once emotionally overwhelming is gradually losing its hold, almost like stepping back from a vast inner landscape that once felt consuming. The pull of illusion begins to weaken when awareness expands, and what once felt magnetic now appears more clearly defined, more human, less powerful than it first seemed. There is a quiet recognition that not every connection that feels intense is meant to remain binding, and not every emotional pull deserves continued investment. When clarity reveals the imbalance beneath it, it can feel like slowly withdrawing energy from something that once occupied too much mental and emotional space. as if creating distance from a gravity that once felt difficult to escape. The realization forming here is not rooted in rejection, but in understanding, in seeing the difference between genuine alignment and emotional entanglement that feeds on admiration without equally nurturing the soul. As perspective widens, the hold of uncertainty begins to loosen, allowing you to see the situation not from within its intensity, but from a calmer vantage point where truth feels easier to trust. And through this widening awareness, the direction becomes quieter, more self-honoring, guiding you toward connections that feel expansive rather than consuming, reciprocal rather than draining, and aligned with the deeper peace that has always existed beneath the surface of your heart. And as this calmer perspective settles more firmly within you, there is a sense of quiet evaluation taking place, almost like standing before many possible paths, noticing which ones truly feel aligned with your inner peace, and which ones were shaped more by illusion than sincerity. The emotional fog continues to clear, allowing you to recognize that not every offer of affection carries the same depth, and not every expression of care is meant to be chosen simply because it is available. There is a thoughtful pause here, a willingness to observe carefully, to feel fully, but also to question whether what is being presented truly resonates with the stability your spirit now seeks. It can feel like gently examining what once felt confusing, allowing intuition to separate what is real from what merely appeared comforting in the moment. The presence of multiple possibilities becomes less overwhelming when clarity strengthens, because you are no longer searching for validation, you are listening for authenticity. Some connections may begin to feel less compelling, not because they are entirely without value, but because they no longer align with the emotional truth, now becoming more important to honor. And through this deeper discernment, the shape of your path becomes more intentional, guided not by urgency, but by quiet certainty, allowing what is genuine to remain, and what is misaligned to gradually lose its influence over your heart. And as this quiet certainty continues strengthening, there is also a growing awareness of where emotional investment has not been returned in the way it was once believed. The recognition feels gentle but undeniable, like noticing a small thread of sincerity that never fully wove itself into something stable. What once may have appeared nurturing now begins to feel less supportive, almost as if the affection offered was never meant to sustain you, but rather to keep you engaged just enough to remain present. There is a sense of emotional imbalance becoming more visible, where one side may have been giving from the heart, while the other struggled to offer the same depth consistently. This realization does not necessarily arrive with conflict, but with quiet clarity, like holding something delicate and realizing it was never as strong as it first seemed. The attachment that once felt reassuring begins to show where its foundations were incomplete, where intention may have been influenced more by desire for comfort than by genuine emotional responsibility. And through this recognition, the situation begins to settle into truth rather than appearance. What is sincere naturally remains steady, while what was sustained through illusion gradually loses its ability to hold influence, allowing your energy to move toward connections that nourish rather than quietly depend, and toward emotional exchanges that feel balanced rather than uncertain. And within this quiet settling, there is also an awareness that some of the tension surrounding this connection may never have been openly expressed, yet still deeply felt beneath the surface. It can feel as though someone has been holding back their true response, choosing silence over confrontation, even while sensing that something about the dynamic no longer feels entirely comfortable. The hesitation here suggests an internal weighing of whether continuing to engage in the same way would only recreate the same emotional imbalance, almost like remaining behind a fragile barrier, observing carefully before deciding how much energy is still worth investing. There is a subtle emotional withdrawal taking place, not as rejection, but as protection, as if instinctively creating distance from interactions that once felt slightly competitive for attention, slightly uncertain in intention. What once felt confusing may now feel easier to recognize, allowing the emotional noise to quiet enough for deeper clarity to form. It can feel like stepping back from unnecessary friction, realizing that not every connection requires constant effort to be maintained. Through this inward shift, the need to prove, to compete, or to continuously accommodate another's fluctuating presence begins to lose its importance. And in that soft release, your energy becomes more self-directed, more selective, allowing only what feels genuinely respectful of your emotional stability to remain part of your space moving forward. And as this emotional space becomes more protected, there is also a growing awareness that not everyone who once appeared aligned was truly moving at the same pace of sincerity. Some intentions begin to feel less stable when viewed through clearer eyes, almost like noticing that certain efforts were motivated more by maintaining position than by genuinely building something meaningful together. The sense here is that someone may be quietly realizing they cannot continue depending on what you provide, while offering only partial consistency in return. As if the balance between giving and receiving was never fully equal from the beginning. There is an internal recognition forming that what once felt promising may not have been supported by the same long-term intention, like observing how certain connections begin to lose cohesion when emotional clarity replaces idealization. It can feel as though someone is becoming aware that maintaining closeness requires more than simply remaining present. It requires accountability, stability, and a willingness to show up in ways that do not rely on your energy to carry the connection forward. This deeper realization strengthens the momentum already unfolding, because once imbalance becomes visible, it becomes difficult to unknow. What once felt uncertain begins to organize into understanding, allowing your discernment to naturally filter who is prepared to meet you with equal sincerity, and who may gradually drift away when the connection no longer offers effortless access to your light. And quietly, there is also the sense that once this awareness takes hold, the direction of the connection can no longer remain where it once was. Something inside begins to lean toward forward movement, toward reclaiming personal control, as if realizing that emotional stability cannot depend on circumstances that feel unpredictable or inconsistent. The energy here suggests an inner decision forming, one that may not yet be spoken aloud, but already guiding behavior, guiding boundaries, guiding the way attention is given or withheld. It can feel like regaining the reins after a period where the situation seemed to move on its own momentum, as if recognizing that continuing in the same pattern would only repeat the same emotional uncertainty. There is a quiet determination building, a readiness to move in a direction that feels more aligned with self-respect, more aligned with truth, even if that movement requires leaving behind dynamics that once felt familiar. Almost like two opposing forces slowly being guided into a single path, where intention becomes stronger than confusion. What becomes clearer here is that the emotional direction is not being chosen from impulse, but from clarity earned through experience. And as this sense of inner direction strengthens, the connection itself begins responding to that shift, revealing whether it can evolve into something more balanced, or whether it naturally falls away when the energy is no longer available to sustain what was never fully reciprocal. And as this sense of direction continues settling within you, there is also a quiet understanding that genuine connection never requires confusion to survive. What begins to feel more solid now is the difference between illusion and emotional resonance, between possibilities that only exist in imagination and something that can actually be felt through mutual presence. It can feel like slowly bringing two separate emotional streams together, noticing whether the energy flows naturally between both sides or whether it only seemed convincing from a distance. There is a gentle realization that true alignment does not ask you to question your intuition repeatedly, nor does it rely on uncertainty to maintain its influence. Instead, it reveals itself through ease, through consistency, through the simple feeling of being met without needing to overextend your own emotional resources. Almost like watching two hands finally meeting at the same level, without one needing to reach far beyond what feels natural. This inner clarity begins dissolving the need to entertain connections that thrive on ambiguity, allowing your heart to recognize where sincerity is reciprocated rather than imitated. And through this recognition, the emotional space around you becomes more harmonious, more intentional, guiding you toward experiences where care is exchanged freely, rather than carefully negotiated, and where the presence of mutual understanding replaces the uncertainty that once clouded your discernment. And within this calmer emotional space, there is also the quiet realization that stability was never meant to come from chasing unpredictable affection, but from recognizing where your worth has always been constant. Something inside begins to settle, almost like leaning back into a sense of self that no longer needs to prove its value in order to be chosen. The understanding here feels grounded, mature, like holding something solid in your hands after a long period of uncertainty, realizing that the security you were seeking externally was always meant to begin within your own emotional foundation. There is a sense that what once felt confusing has now clarified into wisdom, showing you that genuine connection does not ask you to abandon your inner balance in order to keep someone close. Instead, it meets you at the same level of sincerity, the same willingness to invest, the same readiness to build something that can sustain both hearts equally. Almost like resting beside something loyal and steady, where trust grows naturally, without needing constant reassurance or emotional negotiation. What settles here is not only the understanding of who could not meet you fully, but also the deeper recognition of what you are no longer willing to compromise. And through this quiet strength, your energy begins to align with connections that respect your peace, honor your value, and contribute to a sense of emotional security that no longer depends on uncertainty to feel meaningful. And as everything begins to settle into this steadier understanding, there is a gentle awareness that peace has never been something another person could truly control, only something that can be momentarily disturbed when attention moves too far away from what already feels true inside. There is a quiet sense of returning inward, almost like recognizing a center within yourself that remains untouched, even when external situations attempt to create confusion. The experience itself seems to have revealed how easily the heart can become entangled when it tries to interpret mixed signals. Yet also, how naturally clarity returns when you reconnect with what feels internally aligned. It can feel like remembering that your emotional stability was never dependent on another's consistency, but on your willingness to trust the quiet knowing that already lives within you. Almost like sensing a calm presence at the core of your awareness, something steady enough that outside influences lose the power to disturb your sense of worth. Through this realization, the lesson becomes less about who tried to take from your light, and more about how deeply your peace belongs to you, remaining available whenever you choose to return to it. And within this quiet return to yourself, There may also be a growing sensitivity to the way your perception has been shifting, almost like seeing the same situation through clearer eyes than before. What once felt confusing or emotionally heavy may now feel more understandable, not because the situation changed instantly, but because your inner certainty has begun to stabilize. There is something deeply validating about realizing that your intuition was quietly guiding you all along. Even when doubt attempted to blur what you sensed, you may notice that your emotional responses feel calmer, more observant, as if an inner awareness is helping you distinguish between what truly deserves your energy and what only appears convincing on the surface. Almost like an inner eye adjusting to the light, allowing you to trust what you feel without needing external confirmation. This can create a gentle sense of reassurance, reminding you that your heart is not naive for caring deeply. It is perceptive, capable of recognizing sincerity when it is present, and also capable of noticing when something no longer aligns with the truth you now see more clearly within yourself. And there is also a quiet reminder here that the way you imagine your future, the way you define what love and connection should feel like, holds more influence than anything that once tried to confuse your heart. When you begin to see yourself as someone capable of creating emotional experiences that feel honest, stable, and respectful of your energy, the need to hold on to situations that feel uncertain gradually fades on its own. It can be helpful to keep nurturing the belief that your sincerity is not something to protect through withdrawal, but something to honor by allowing only what feels aligned to remain present. From this perspective, clarity becomes less about avoiding disappointment and more about trusting that what is meant for you will never require you to doubt your own worth. There is also a subtle pattern here that seems to echo through every part of this experience. A reminder that when someone acts from fear, insecurity, or emotional lack, their behavior often speaks more about what they are struggling with internally than about your value. Sometimes the distance, the inconsistency, or even the sense of being misunderstood can feel personal at first. Yet over time, it becomes clearer that these reactions were expressions of confusion rather than reflections of your worth. Like watching the same emotional ripple appear in different forms, it becomes easier to see that not every reaction directed toward you was truly about you. And in recognizing this, something softens, allowing compassion to exist without allowing your boundaries to dissolve, reminding you that protecting your peace does not require hardening your heart. And as everything gently settles, there is a quiet reassurance that the direction of your life is not determined by who misunderstood your heart, but by where your attention now chooses to rest. When your energy begins to return to what feels nourishing, supportive, and true to your sense of self, the emotional atmosphere around you naturally begins to shift as well. It can feel like slowly aligning with a steadier rhythm inside, where clarity grows not through force, but through consistent care for what truly deserves your focus. Almost as if your inner world begins shaping your outer experiences more intentionally, guiding you toward connections that reflect the same sincerity you offer. And from this place, your peace no longer feels fragile. It feels quietly self-sustaining. As always, take only what feels true for your heart, and allow the rest to simply pass by without pressure. Not every message will resonate with everyone, and that is completely okay. Your presence here, your openness, and your willingness to reflect are already meaningful steps in your own journey. Thank you for sharing your time and energy in this space. If this reading found you at the right moment, you are always welcome to return whenever you feel guided. Until then, may your path continue unfolding with clarity, gentleness, and a quiet trust in yourself.